The bucket clattered against the stones at the bottom of Quinn Quade's well just past midnight on a scorching August night in 1877, and he knew immediately that someone was stealing water from him in the heart of Fort Davis, Texas. Quinn sat up in his bed, listening through the open window as rope scraped against the wooden crossbeam of his well. The drought had been strangling West Texas for 3 months now, turning the land brittle and desperate. Men had killed for less than water in times like these. He swung his legs out of bed, pulled on his trousers and boots, and grabbed the rifle from beside his door more out of habit than intention. The moonlight painted everything silver as he stepped onto his porch, and that was when he saw her. She was thin, too thin, with dark hair that hung past her shoulders in tangled waves. Her dress had once been blue but was now faded to the color of dusty sky, and she worked the well rope with hands that trembled from exhaustion. A mule stood behind her, so gaunt its ribs showed like barrel staves, and 2 empty barrels were lashed to a crude travois behind it. Quinn set the rifle against the porch rail and walked toward her. She did not hear him at first, too focused on hauling up the bucket. When she finally sensed his presence and spun around, the bucket splashed back down into the well. Her eyes were huge in her thin face, green as bottled glass, and filled with the kind of fear that came from knowing you had nothing left to lose. "I am sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. "Please, I will leave. I just need to take all you need," Quinn said. She stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign tongue. Her hands were still on the rope, white-knuckled and shaking. Up close, he could see that she was young, maybe 22 or 23, and that she had been crying. Tear tracks cut through the dust on her cheeks. "I mean it," he said, stepping forward to take the rope from her hands. "Let me help you." "Why?" The word came out broken, disbelieving. "Because you need water and I have got it." He began pulling up the bucket, hand over hand. His shoulders flexed under his cotton shirt, and when the bucket reached the top, he poured it into one of her barrels. "Where are you coming from?" "A homestead 15 miles south," she said quietly, still watching him as if he might vanish or turn violent at any moment. "My father's place." Was my father's place. Quinn lowered the bucket again, let it sink and fill, then hauled it back up. The work was automatic, something he had done 10,000 times. He died 4 days ago, cholera. Her voice did not break, but something in her eyes did. "My mother died 2 years back. It is just me now." He poured the second bucket into her barrel and sent the bucket down again. "You have been alone out there for 4 days. I buried him myself." She said it with a strange pride, as if this awful task was the only thing she had left to hold on to. "But the well ran dry yesterday. I thought maybe in town someone might have water to spare, but everyone said no. Said they needed it for themselves. I saw your well when I rode past earlier. I know it is stealing, but it is not stealing if I am giving it to you." Quinn filled the bucket again. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then said, "Luna Hartley, Quinn Quade." He nodded toward the house behind him, a simple ranch house with a barn and corral. "I run cattle when there is grass for them to eat. Right now I am mostly just trying to keep them alive." "Everyone is trying to keep something alive," Luna said softly. They worked in silence for a while, filling both barrels until water sloshed at the rims. Quinn's well was deep, one of the best in Fort Davis, fed by a spring that had never yet run dry. He had paid a Mexican well digger a small fortune to find the right spot 3 years ago, and it had been worth every penny. When the barrels were full, Luna said, "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you, do not need repaying." Quinn tied off the rope and studied her gaunt face, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. "When did you last eat?" "I had some cornmeal yesterday morning." "Come inside, I will make you something." "I should get back to what?" An empty house 15 miles away. Quinn's voice was gentle but firm. You are exhausted. Your mule is about to fall over. Rest for a few hours at least. Luna looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing trust against desperation. Finally, she nodded, too tired to argue. Quinn led her mule to his barn, where he gave it hay and a bucket of water. The animal drank like it had been crossing a desert, which in a way it had. Inside the house, Quinn lit a lamp and stoked the coals in his stove. He had beans already cooked, and he heated them up with some salt pork and made coffee that was strong enough to wake the dead. Luna sat at his table, her hands folded in her lap, looking around at his simple home with the wariness of a wild animal in a trap. You live here alone? She asked. Yes. Had a wife, but she died in childbirth 5 years back. The baby too. He said it matter-of-factly, the way he had learned to say it, like reporting the weather. Been just me since then. I am sorry. Life out here does not give us much choice about who we lose. He set a plate of food in front of her and watched as she forced herself to eat slowly, with dignity, even though he could tell she wanted to devour it. What are you planning to do now? You cannot stay out at that homestead by yourself. I know. She swallowed a mouthful of beans. I thought maybe I could sell it, use the money to get to San Antonio or Austin, find work there. Doubt anyone is buying land right now, not with the drought, and a woman traveling alone to San Antonio is asking for trouble. Quinn poured coffee for both of them. There are bad men on those roads. There are bad men everywhere. But her voice shook slightly, betraying her fear. Quinn sat down across from her and wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. In the lamplight, she looked even younger than he had first thought, and he felt something stir in his chest that had been dormant for a long time. Not just attraction, though she was pretty beneath the dirt and exhaustion, but a fierce protectiveness that surprised him. You could stay here, he said. Luna's head snapped up. What? Just until you figure out what you are going to do. I have got a spare room. You could help around the place, earn your keep. It would be safer than being out there alone. You do not know me. Why would you do that? Same reason I let you take the water. Because you need help and I can give it. He met her eyes steadily. I am not asking for anything improper, just offering a roof and safety until you get your feet under you. Luna stared at him, and he could see her mind working, trying to find the trap or the trick. But exhaustion and hope were winning over suspicion. Just until I figure things out. Just until then. She nodded slowly. All right, thank you. Quinn showed her to the spare room, which had not been used since his wife's sister had visited years ago. There was a bed with clean sheets and a window that looked out over the scrubland toward the distant mountains. Luna stood in the doorway, clutching her few possessions in a cloth bundle, and looked like she might cry. Get some sleep, Quinn said gently. We can talk more in the morning. He left her there and went back to his own room, but he did not sleep for a long time. He kept thinking about the fear in her eyes when she had first seen him, and the way that fear had slowly given way to fragile trust. He thought about her burying her father alone, and hauling empty barrels 15 miles in the dark, and the fact that every other person in Fort Davis had turned her away. The West was hard, and it made people hard too. But Quinn had never been able to stomach cruelty, especially not to someone already beaten down by circumstance. His mother had raised him better than that, before she had died when he was 16. She had taught him that kindness was not weakness, even in a place that often punished it. When morning came, Quinn woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. He walked into his kitchen to find Luna at the stove, cooking breakfast with the skill of someone who had been doing it since childhood. She had washed her face and hands and braided her hair, and in the morning light streaming through the window, she looked less like a ghost and more like a woman. You did not have to do this, he said. You fed me last night. It is only fair. She slid bacon onto a plate and cracked eggs into the pan. "I found your hen house. They needed feeding, so I took care of it. Appreciate that." Quinn sat down at the table and watched her work. She moved efficiently despite her obvious exhaustion, and he found himself admiring the straight line of her back, the graceful economy of her movements. They ate together in comfortable silence, and afterward Quinn said, "I need to ride out and check on my cattle today. You are welcome to come along if you want, or you can rest here." "I will come. I am used to hard work." She paused, then added, "And I want to earn my keep." They saddled up 2 horses, Quinn's big buckskin gelding and a gentler mare he kept for when he needed a spare mount. Luna rode well, sitting her horse with the easy confidence of someone who had grown up in the saddle. As they headed out into the scrubland, the sun already beating down with merciless intensity, Quinn pointed out landmarks and told her about his land. He had 300 acres, which was not much by Texas standards, but enough to run a modest herd when the grass was good. Right now his cattle were scattered across the property, searching for any vegetation that still had life in it. He had lost 20 head already to the drought, and he knew he would lose more before the rains came, if they came. Luna asked intelligent questions and listened carefully to his answers. She had grown up on a homestead and knew the rhythms of ranch life, the constant battle against weather and predators and plain bad luck. They found a dozen cattle clustered around a dying creek, and Quinn made note to move them closer to his well. "You will go broke hauling water to them," Luna observed. "Maybe, but I will not watch them die of thirst if I can prevent it." She looked at him with something like approval in her green eyes. "You are different from most men I have known." "How so?" "Most men out here only think about what benefits them. You seem to think about what is right." Quinn shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just doing what I can." They rode for hours, checking on the scattered cattle and mending a section of fence that had come down. Luna worked beside him without complaint, holding posts steady while he hammered them in, her hands blistering in the heat. When they finally headed back to the house in late afternoon, both of them were coated in dust and sweat. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, Luna said, "I should go back to my father's place tomorrow, collect what I can salvage, maybe find his papers. If I am going to try to sell it, I will need them." "I will go with you," Quinn said. "You do not have to. 15 miles alone is not safe, and you are too tired to make the trip there and back in one day. We will take the wagon, load up anything worth taking, and be back by tomorrow night." Luna was quiet for a moment, then said, "Why are you being so kind to me?" Quinn looked out at the darkening land, choosing his words carefully. "My wife, Emma, she was from back east, Boston. She came out here with her family when she was 18, and she hated it at first. The heat, the emptiness, the hardship of it all. But she was brave and she adapted. We met at a church social and married 6 months later." He paused, old grief tightening his throat. "When she died, when they both died, I thought I would leave, sell this place and go back to Kansas where I grew up. But I stayed, and I made a life here, and I survived." But surviving is not the same as living. He turned to look at Luna, and her eyes were luminous in the fading light. "I guess what I am saying is, I know what it is like to lose everything, and I know what it is like when someone offers you a hand up instead of stepping over you. A preacher did that for me when Emma died, let me stay with him for a few weeks when I could not stand to be in this house. I figure I am just passing that kindness along." Luna's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "I will not forget this. Do not need you to forget it. Just need you to do the same for someone else someday, when you are able." They left at dawn the next morning, the wagon rattling over the rough trail that led south from Fort Davis. Luna sat beside Quinn on the bench seat, her face set in lines of grim determination. As they drew closer to her father's homestead, she grew quieter, retreating into herself. The place was even more desolate than Quinn had imagined. A small soddy built into the side of a hill, a barn that was really just a lean-to, and a well that had indeed run dry, its bottom cracked and dusty. Luna led him to a spot behind the house where a fresh mound of earth marked her father's grave. "Lucius Hartley," she said softly, looking down at the grave. "He came here after my mother died, thought he could make a new start, but the land broke him, just like it broke her." "How did your mother die?" Quinn asked gently. "Sadness, mostly. She was never meant for this life. She was a schoolteacher in Missouri, gentle and refined. My father brought her out here full of dreams about taming the frontier, but there was nothing to tame, just endless work and loneliness. She wasted away over 2 years, and when she died, she probably weighed 90 pounds. Luna knelt and touched the dry earth of her father's grave. He loved her so much that when she was gone, he could not find a reason to keep fighting. He just gave up, piece by piece. The cholera just finished what grief had started. Quinn stood beside her, his hat in his hands, giving her the space to mourn. After a few minutes, Luna stood and wiped her eyes. "Let me show you what is inside." The soddy was dim and stifling, smelling of sickness and death. Luna moved through it mechanically, gathering her father's papers from a trunk, a few photographs in tin frames, her mother's Bible, and some clothing. There was not much else worth taking. The furniture was rough-made and falling apart, the dishes were cracked, and the few tools were rusted beyond repair. "This is my mother," Luna said, showing Quinn a photograph of a young woman with a solemn face and kind eyes. "And this is them on their wedding day." In the photograph, Lucius Hartley was tall and handsome, his arm around his bride, both of them looking at the camera with hope and determination. Quinn thought about how many people came west with that same hope, and how many of them ended up in lonely graves scattered across the prairie. They loaded everything into the wagon, which took less than an hour. Luna walked through the soddy one last time, touching the walls her father had built, the stove her mother had cooked on, the bed where both of them had died. Then she walked out, closed the door, and did not look back. On the ride home, Luna was quiet for a long time. Finally she said, "I do not think I can sell this place. I do not think it is worth anything to anyone." "Probably not," Quinn agreed, "but you still own the land, might be worth something someday. Or it might just sit there empty until it crumbles back into the earth." She looked at him. "What would you do?" "I would hold onto the deed just in case, but I would not count on it for anything." Luna nodded slowly. "Then I guess I need to figure out another plan. You have got time. No need to rush into anything." When they got back to Quinn's ranch, it was late afternoon. They unloaded Luna's few possessions into her room, and she stood among them looking lost. Everything she owned in the world fit into 2 small trunks and a couple of bundles. It was a stark accounting of a life. Over the following weeks, Luna settled into a routine at Quinn's ranch. She cooked and cleaned, tended the chickens and the vegetable garden, and helped Quinn with the endless work of keeping the cattle alive through the drought. She was tireless and capable, and Quinn found himself relying on her more and more, but it was more than just her usefulness that drew him to her. It was the way she laughed at his dry jokes, the way she sang while she worked, the way she sat on the porch in the evenings and watched the stars come out with a look of wonder on her face. She was recovering from her grief, slowly but surely, like a plant putting out new shoots after a fire. And Quinn was falling in love with her, though he tried to deny it to himself. She was young, vulnerable, dependent on him for shelter and safety. It would be wrong to take advantage of that. So he kept his distance, was scrupulously polite, never touched her except in the most casual and necessary ways. but he could not stop thinking about her. The way candlelight caught in her dark hair, the sound of her voice calling his name from the kitchen. The sight of her hanging laundry, her arms raised to pin sheets to the line, her waist slim and strong in her faded dress. Luna, for her part, was equally aware of Quinn. She noticed the way his hands looked when he worked, strong and capable and gentle with the animals. She noticed the kindness in his eyes, the way he always thought of others before himself. She noticed how safe she felt in his presence, how the nightmares that had plagued her since her father's death were fading. She had never known a man like Quinn Quade. Her father had been weak and dreamy, broken by the first real hardship. The men in Fort Davis who had turned her away had been selfish and hard, but Quinn was strong without being cruel, generous without expecting anything in return. He was, she realized with some surprise, exactly the kind of man she could love. But she said nothing, because she was living in his house on his charity, and she did not want him to think she was trying to trap him into something. So she kept her feelings locked away and tried to focus on being useful. August turned into September, and the drought showed no signs of breaking. Quinn hauled water to his cattle every day, a backbreaking task that left him exhausted by evening. Luna helped as much as she could, driving the wagon while he filled troughs, holding horses while he checked their hooves for cracks in the dry ground. One evening, as they were finishing up, Quinn's horse shied at a rattlesnake and sent him tumbling to the ground. He landed hard on his shoulder and Luna heard something pop. Quinn got to his feet, his face white with pain, his left arm hanging at an odd angle. "It is dislocated," he said through gritted teeth. "I need you to put it back in." Luna had seen her father set a dislocated shoulder once, years ago, but she had never done it herself. "I do not know if I can. You have to. It will not heal right if we leave it." Quinn sat down heavily on the wagon tailgate. "Just pull straight out and up when I tell you." Luna positioned herself as she remembered her father doing, gripping Quinn's arm firmly despite her trembling hands. Quinn nodded, and she pulled. He let out a sound between a gasp and a groan, and then there was a sickening pop as the joint slid back into place. Quinn sagged forward, breathing hard, and Luna caught him before he could fall. She held him steady, her arms around his chest, and for a moment they stayed like that, pressed together in the dying light. She could feel his heart pounding, smell the sweat and dust on his skin, and something shifted between them, some barrier crumbling. Quinn pulled back slowly and looked at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. "Thank you," he said softly. "You are welcome," she whispered. They drove back to the ranch in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before, charged with unspoken feelings. That night, Luna lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, her heart racing. She knew that something had changed between them, and she did not know what to do about it. Quinn, in his own room, was having similar thoughts. Feeling Luna's arms around him had awakened something he had thought dead. He wanted her, not just physically but in every way. He wanted her laughter and her company, her strength and her softness. He wanted to wake up beside her and fall asleep holding her. He wanted to build a life with her, but he did not know if she felt the same way, and he was terrified of ruining what they had by asking. The tension between them grew over the next few days. They were excruciatingly polite with each other, careful not to touch, not to meet each other's eyes for too long. It was like living on the edge of a cliff, both of them afraid to take the step that would send them tumbling into the unknown. Finally, on a Sunday afternoon when they were sitting on the porch together, Quinn could not take it anymore. "Luna, I need to talk to you about something." She looked at him, her green eyes wary. "All right. You have been here almost 2 months now, and you have more than earned your keep. This is your home for as long as you want it to be, but I need to know what you are thinking about your future. Are you still planning to leave, To go to San Antonio or somewhere else. Luna was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap. Then she said, "Do you want me to leave?" "No." The word came out more forcefully than he had intended. "No, I do not want you to leave, but I do not want you to feel trapped here either." "I do not feel trapped." She looked down at her hands. "I feel safer here than I have felt anywhere in my whole life. But I also do not want to be a burden on you forever." "You are not a burden." Quinn shifted to face her more fully. "Luna, you have to know that you have become important to me, more important than I probably should admit." Her head came up, eyes wide. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have feelings for you, strong feelings, but I do not want you to feel obligated because I helped you. I do not want you to think you owe me anything." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his inability to say what he meant. "I just need you to know that if you stay, it is because you want to, not because you think you have to." Luna stood up, her face flushed. "You think I would stay out of obligation? I do not know what to think." "Well, let me make it clear." Her voice shook with emotion. "I am falling in love with you, Quinn Quade. I have been falling in love with you since that first night when you told me to take all the water I needed. I stay because every morning I wake up happy to be here, happy to see you, happy to work beside you. I stay because when I think about leaving, my heart breaks. So no, it is not obligation, it is love." Quinn stood up too, his heart hammering in his chest. "You love me." "Yes, you stubborn man, I love you." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, her hands gripping his shirt, and when he kissed her, it was like coming home after a long journey. She kissed him back with a passion that took his breath away, her body pressed against his, and for a long moment the world consisted of nothing but the two of them. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathing hard, Quinn cupped her face in his hands and said, "I love you too. I think I have loved you since I saw you at my well, so desperate and so brave." Luna laughed, and it was a sound of pure joy. "I was terrified of you. I know. And then you trusted me anyway. That is when I knew you were special." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Will you marry me, Luna Hartley? Will you stay here not as my guest or my employee, but as my wife?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Fort Davis, with the preacher who had helped Quinn after Emma's death officiating. It was a simple ceremony, attended by a handful of ranchers and townspeople who had come to respect Quinn over the years. Luna wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric Quinn had bought her in town, pale yellow like sunshine, and she carried wildflowers that still bloomed despite the drought. When Quinn slipped the ring on her finger, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, Luna's eyes filled with tears of happiness. They kissed as husband and wife, and the small congregation applauded, and Quinn felt a completeness he had not known since Emma's death. The wedding night was tender and passionate, both of them nervous and eager at the same time. Quinn was gentle with Luna, patient, and she responded to him with a trust and desire that humbled him. They learned each other slowly, finding rhythms and pleasures that were theirs alone, and when they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Luna thought that she had never known such contentment. Life settled into a new pattern after that. They worked together during the day, side by side in the heat and dust, and at night they retreated into their own private world of intimacy and love. The drought continued, and Quinn lost more cattle, but he faced it with Luna beside him, and that made all the difference. In October, the rains finally came. Great thunderstorms that rolled across the prairie, turning the dust to mud and the creeks to rushing torrents. Quinn and Luna stood on their porch and watched the rain fall, holding each other and laughing like children. The land seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and within weeks, green shoots appeared in places that had been barren for months. By November, Luna knew she was pregnant. She told Quinn over breakfast one morning, and the look of wonder and joy on his face made her cry. He held her close and whispered promises into her hair, promises to take care of her and their child, to build a good life for them, to love them always. The pregnancy was easier than Luna had feared, perhaps because she was young and strong, or perhaps because she was so happy. Quinn hovered over her like a worried hen, trying to keep her from doing heavy work, and she had to remind him repeatedly that she was pregnant, not an invalid. As her belly grew, Quinn talked to it every night, telling their child about the ranch, about the cattle, about all the things they would do together. Luna would laugh and run her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed by how much she loved this gentle, strong man who had taken her in when she had nothing. In May of 1878, Luna went into labor on a warm spring evening. Quinn rode for the midwife, a capable German woman named Mrs. Schmidt, who had delivered half the babies in Fort Davis. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Quinn, pacing outside the bedroom door, thought he would lose his mind with worry. But Luna was strong, stronger than Emma had been, and when the baby finally came, its cries were loud and healthy. Mrs. Schmidt opened the door with a smile and said, "You have a son, Mr. Quade." Quinn entered the room to find Luna propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a red-faced, squalling infant. "Our son," she said, looking up at him with tired joy. Quinn sat beside her and looked down at the baby, this tiny person they had created together. He had dark hair like Luna and what looked like it would be Quinn's blue-gray eyes. "He is perfect," Quinn said hoarsely. "What should we name him?" Luna asked. They had discussed names for weeks but had never quite decided. Now, looking at his son, Quinn thought of his own father, a good man who had died young. "What about Nathaniel? After my father." "Nathaniel Quade," Luna said, testing it. "I like it. Nathaniel Quinn Quade." "Nathaniel Quinn Quade," Quinn repeated, and felt something settle in his chest, some final piece of himself that had been missing. He had a wife he adored and a healthy son. He had a ranch that was recovering from the drought. He had, against all odds, found happiness again. The years that followed were good ones. Nathaniel grew into a sturdy, bright-eyed boy who followed his father everywhere, learning the ranch from the time he could walk. Luna bloomed in motherhood, patient and loving, and Quinn fell more in love with her with each passing year. In 1880, Luna gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose, after Luna's mother whose middle name it had been. Rose was small and delicate, with Luna's green eyes and a temperament as sweet as her name. Nathaniel adored his little sister and appointed himself her protector. Quinn's ranch prospered. The rains had returned to normal patterns, and his herd grew steadily. He built additions onto the house, adding a proper parlor and more bedrooms. He hired a couple of hands to help with the work, Mexican brothers named Carlos and Miguel who were loyal and hardworking. Luna transformed the house into a real home, with curtains at the windows, rugs on the floors, and a garden that produced vegetables and flowers. She made friends among the other ranch wives, and once a month they would gather for quilting bees and conversation. She was no longer the desperate, frightened girl who had stolen water from Quinn's well. She was a confident, beloved woman with a family and a place in the community. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Luna would remember that night in August of 1877 when she had crept up to Quinn's well, certain that she was going to die alone in her father's empty soddy. She would remember the sound of his voice saying, "Take all you need," and how those simple words had changed everything. She told Quinn about these memories once, and he pulled her close and said, "I was dying too in my own way." I just did not know it until you came along and reminded me how to live." In 1883, they had another child, a son they named Thomas. He was a loud, energetic baby who grew into a loud, energetic boy, always getting into mischief and making his siblings laugh. The house was full of noise and chaos and love, and Quinn thought sometimes that if someone had told him 6 years ago that this would be his life, he would not have believed them. One evening in the summer of 1885, Quinn and Luna sat on their porch while their children played in the yard. Nathaniel was 7 now, teaching Rose to rope a fence post while Thomas toddled around getting in the way. The sun was setting in its usual blaze of color, and the air smelled of sage and cattle and rain that would come later that night. "You ever think about that night?" Quinn asked, reaching for Luna's hand. Well, she laced her fingers through his, all the time. "I almost did not come out. I almost just let you take the water and go." "What made you come out?" Quinn thought about it. "I heard you crying. Just a little sound, like you were trying to hold it in, and I thought, whoever is stealing my water is desperate enough to cry over it. I could not let that go." Luna leaned her head on his shoulder. "My whole life changed because you heard me crying. Both our lives changed." He kissed the top of her head. "Best decision I ever made, walking out to that well. Best decision I ever made was trusting you when you said to take all I need." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, feeling the evening breeze, grateful for the unexpected grace that had brought them together. The West was still hard, still unforgiving, but they faced it together, and that made all the difference. In 1887, their 4th child was born, another daughter they named Emma, after Quinn's first wife. It had been Luna's idea, a gesture of respect and understanding that moved Quinn to tears. This Emma was strong and healthy, with a stubborn streak that promised she would be a force to be reckoned with as she grew. As the children grew, Quinn and Luna made sure they knew the story of how their parents had met. They told them about the drought, about Luna's desperation, about Quinn's kindness. They wanted their children to understand that small acts of compassion could change lives, that generosity was never wasted, that love could grow in the most unlikely places. Nathaniel especially took the lesson to heart. He grew into a young man who was quick to help neighbors in trouble, who shared what he had freely, who saw the humanity in everyone he met. Quinn would watch his eldest son and feel a profound pride, knowing that he was raising someone who would make the world a little better. The ranch continued to prosper through the 1880s and into the 1890s. Quinn expanded his holdings, buying up adjacent land as it became available. He built a new barn and a bunkhouse for his growing crew of ranch hands. He invested in better breeding stock and became known throughout West Texas for the quality of his cattle. But despite his success, Quinn never forgot where he had come from, and he never turned away someone in need. During the harsh winter of 1891, when blizzards decimated herds across the region, Quinn opened his barn to neighbors who had lost everything, sheltering their cattle alongside his own and sharing his hay stores. When asked why he would risk his own herd's survival for others, he simply said, "Because someone might need what I have, and I remember what it was like to need." Luna established a reputation of her own as a woman of compassion and practical wisdom. She took in a young widow with 2 children in 1893, giving them a place to stay until the woman could get on her feet. She organized relief efforts when a fire destroyed half of Fort Davis in 1895, coordinating donations of food, clothing, and building materials. She taught her daughters to be strong and independent, and her sons to be kind and respectful. In 1898, when Nathaniel turned 20, he announced that he wanted to marry a young woman named Sarah Brennan, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Quinn and Luna gave their blessing gladly, and the wedding was held at the ranch, with half of Fort Davis in attendance. Watching his son stand at the altar with his bride, Quinn felt the circle of life completing itself, and he reached for Luna's hand, grateful beyond words for the journey they had taken together. Rose followed her brother into marriage 2 years later, wedding a young lawyer from El Paso who had fallen head over heels for her the moment they met. Thomas showed no signs of settling down, too busy exploring every corner of Texas and getting into good-natured trouble. And Emma, true to her stubborn nature, declared that she had no intention of marrying anyone and planned instead to become a teacher. Through it all, Quinn and Luna remained the center of their family, the foundation on which everything else was built. They still worked the ranch together, though they hired more help as they got older. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset. And they still told the story of the midnight meeting at the well, the moment that had changed everything. In the spring of 1903, Quinn woke one morning to find his hair had gone completely gray, seemingly overnight. Luna laughed and said hers had been gray for years. She had just been hiding it better. They were in their late 40s now, still healthy and strong but feeling the years in their joints and backs. "We are getting old," Quinn observed, looking at himself in the mirror. "We are getting lucky," Luna corrected, coming up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. "Not everyone gets to grow old with the person they love." Quinn turned in her arms and kissed her, still marveling after all these years at how much he loved her. "Thank you for stealing my water. Thank you for letting me take all I needed." They had 6 grandchildren by 1905, with more on the way. The ranch was thriving under the management of Nathaniel, who had taken over most of the day-to-day operations. Quinn and Luna were transitioning into the role of elder statesmen, offering advice and wisdom but letting the younger generation make the decisions. One summer evening, as 3 generations of Quads gathered for a Sunday dinner, Quinn looked around the table at his family and felt a contentment so profound it was almost painful. His children were happy and successful. His grandchildren were healthy and loved. His wife sat beside him, still beautiful in his eyes, her hand resting on his arm after dinner as the family scattered across the porch and yard. Luna's oldest granddaughter, a curious 8-year-old named Margaret, climbed into her lap and said, "Grandma, tell me again how you met Grandpa." Luna looked at Quinn, who nodded encouragingly and began the story. "It was a hot August night in 1877, and I was more scared than I had ever been in my life. I had lost everything, and I thought I was going to die. But I heard about a well in Fort Davis that still had water, and I decided to try one last time to save myself. So I crept up to that well at midnight, hoping no one would see me, and I started stealing water." The family gathered close to listen, even though most of them had heard the story dozens of times. There was something magical about it, something that never got old. The tale of 2 lonely people finding each other in the darkness, of kindness transforming into love, of a single act of generosity changing the course of lives. When Luna finished, Margaret said, "And you lived happily ever after." "We did," Luna confirmed, looking at Quinn with love shining in her eyes. "We really did." Quinn pulled Luna close and kissed her temple, and around them their family smiled, secure in the knowledge that they were the product of something rare and beautiful. They were the legacy of a midnight meeting at a well, of a desperate woman and a compassionate man, of 5 simple words that had changed everything. Take all you need. The years continued to roll by, marked by the usual joys and sorrows of life. Quinn's hair went from gray to white, and Luna's face gained lines that Quinn thought made her even more beautiful. They lost friends to age and illness, attended funerals, and planted trees in memory of those who had gone. In 1910, they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with a party thrown by their children. The whole county turned out, it seemed, to honor the couple who had become symbols of enduring love and partnership. Speeches were made, toasts were raised, and Quinn and Luna danced together as the sun set, moving with the easy grace of two people who knew each other's every step. 32 years, Quinn mused as they swayed together. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday that I found you at my well. Both things are true, Luna said. We have lived a lifetime together, and every day I still feel like that girl you saved, grateful and amazed that you chose me. I did not choose you. Fate did. God did. Whatever power moves the universe, it put you at my well that night, and I will be grateful for it until the day I die. They continued to dance as their family and friends looked on, a living testament to the power of kindness and love. Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1918, at the age of 62. It was a cold January night, and he and Luna had been lying in bed talking about the grandchildren, about the ranch, about all the good years they had shared. Quinn kissed her goodnight, told her he loved her, and closed his eyes. When Luna woke in the morning, he was gone, a slight smile still on his face. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives Quinn had touched over the years, neighboring ranchers whose cattle he had sheltered, drifters he had given jobs to when they needed work, children he had helped, widows he had been kind to, friends he had stood by through hard times. They came to pay their respects to a man who had lived his life according to a simple principle. When someone needs what you have, you give it to them. Luna grieved deeply, but not bitterly. She had had 32 years with the love of her life, and she knew how rare and precious that was. She had children and grandchildren who loved her, a home that was filled with happy memories, and a lifetime of moments to look back on with joy. She lived another 12 years, staying active on the ranch and deeply involved in her family's lives. She watched her grandchildren grow up and start families of their own. She held great-grandchildren in her arms and told them stories about their great-grandfather, the cowboy who had said, "Take all you need," to a desperate woman at midnight. Luna passed away in the spring of 1930, at the age of 75. Her children found her in the garden she had tended for 50 years, a basket of early vegetables at her feet, a peaceful expression on her face. They buried her next to Quinn, under a cottonwood tree that had grown tall and strong, its roots nourished by the same deep spring that fed the well where their love story had begun. On their shared gravestone, Nathaniel had carved a simple inscription: Quinn Quade, 1856-1918, Luna Hartley Quade, 1855-1930. Take all you need. The ranch continued to prosper for generations, passed down through the family with the same values Quinn and Luna had instilled in their children. The well still produced clear, cold water, never running dry even in the worst droughts. And every August, on the anniversary of that midnight meeting in 1877, the Quade family would gather at the well and tell the story again, making sure it was never forgotten. The story of a woman who had lost everything, and a man who had everything to give. The story of how a simple act of kindness in the darkness had blossomed into a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. The story of Quinn and Luna, and the night their lives changed forever at a well in Fort Davis, Texas, when 5 words bridged the gap between desperation and hope. Take all you need. It became a family motto, those 5 words. Whenever a Quade saw someone in trouble, whenever they had the chance to help, they remembered Quinn at his well, offering not just water but salvation. They remembered Luna's courage in accepting that help, in trusting a stranger in the darkness. And they tried to live up to that legacy, to be the kind of people who gave freely and loved deeply. The well still stands today, carefully preserved by the descendants of Quinn and Luna Quade. It has been designated a historical landmark, with a plaque that tells the story of the midnight meeting that changed 2 lives. Visitors come from all over to see it, to draw water from the same source that once saved a desperate woman's life, to stand where one of the great love stories of the Old West began. And on quiet nights when the wind blows across the West Texas prairie, you can almost hear the echo of a bucket clattering against stones, the creak of rope on wood, and a voice saying those 5 simple, powerful words that changed everything. Take all you need. The story of Quinn and Luna Quade reminds us that even in the hardest places, in the most desperate times, kindness matters. That generosity of spirit can transform lives. That love can grow in unexpected places, between unexpected people, if we are brave enough to trust and open enough to give. Their descendants still live in Fort Davis, still run cattle on land that Quinn bought over a century ago, still draw water from the well that brought their great-great-grandparents together. They carry the story with them like a talisman, a reminder of who they are and what they value. And every time one of them helps a stranger, shares what they have with someone in need, or offers kindness when it would be easier to look away, they are honoring Quinn and Luna's memory. They are living proof that the ripples from a single act of compassion can spread out across generations, shaping not just individual lives but entire family legacies. The well in Fort Davis still flows clear and cold, fed by the deep spring that has never failed. And standing beside it, you can imagine a hot August night in 1877, a desperate woman with a bucket, and a man who chose kindness over suspicion, generosity over fear, love over loneliness. You can imagine the moment their eyes met, the moment fear gave way to trust, the moment 2 broken people found the pieces they needed in each other. You can imagine the beginning of a love story that would last a lifetime and echo through generations. And you can remember that we all have wells to offer, whether they are filled with water or kindness, or simply the willingness to see another person's need and respond with grace. We all have the power to say, "Take all you need," to someone who is struggling, and in doing so, to change not just their life but our own. That is the true legacy of Quinn and Luna Quade. Not the ranch or the cattle or the land, but the lesson they taught through their lives. That we are all connected, that we all need each other, and that the most important thing we can do in this life is to love well and give freely. Their story lives on, told and retold, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, the transformative nature of love, and the simple truth that sometimes in the darkest moments, all we need is for someone to say, "Take all you need." And in those moments, if we are very lucky, we might find not just what we need to survive, but what we need to truly live. We might find, as Luna Hartley found that midnight at Quinn Quade's well, that the water we came for is nothing compared to the love we never knew we were searching for. That is the gift Quinn gave Luna on that hot August night in 1877. Not just water, but hope. Not just survival, but a future. Not just kindness, but love that would last a lifetime and beyond. And that is the gift they gave to all of us. Their story a reminder that magic can happen in the most ordinary places, between the most ordinary people. If we are willing to be generous with what we have and brave enough to accept what we need, the well still stands. The water still flows. And the story of Quinn and Luna Quade still reminds us that love, like water, is essential to life. And when we share it freely, We create something that can sustain not just two people, but generations yet to come. In the end, that is what matters. Not how the story began in desperation and fear, but how it unfolded in trust and love. Not the hardships Quinn and Luna faced, but the joy they found in facing them together. Not the moment of meeting, but the lifetime of love that followed. Their story is complete, their circle closed, their legacy secure. And somewhere in West Texas, under a cottonwood tree beside a well that never runs dry, two people who loved each other well rest side by side, their story told and retold, their love remembered and honored, their lives a testament to the simple, powerful truth that the best things in life begin when someone says and means, "Take all you need."